Today I'd like to spend a few moments talking with you about safe driving, the basics of safe driving. Driving a city-owned vehicle carries with it a tremendous amount of dynamic responsibility and decision making. There's going to be Monday morning quarterbacking by family, friends, peers, city administrators, the news, if you're involved in a collision. Dramatic, graphic, sensational city-owned vehicle crashes are just newsy. They're just real newsy. And it's not the routine runs you make every night that make the news. Having a sensational crash in a sanitation truck is just as newsy as a police shooting. Good or bad, that's the reality of the world we live in. You must constantly review and react to what's happening while remembering policy, your core beliefs as a professional city employee, and what the public and what your department expects from you. When you drive a city-owned vehicle, your head and eyes need to be in motion at all times. Visually look around your travel path. Running into fixed objects, signs, parked vehicles, fire plugs are one of the most common claims that your city has to deal with. Over the past 3 years, the three largest categories of losses in the state are autos that struck stationary objects, backing accidents, and insured vehicles struck by other objects or other vehicles. These are all preventable if we use good judgment, keep focused on the driving task, and drive like a professional. The top three claims categories from a severity perspective are auto intersection accidents, personal injury protection or non-collision type events, and autos that strike stationary objects. These categories represent about 56% of the total insurance payouts, and they all can be avoided if we stay focused and drive like professionals. Studies show that for every 10 miles per hour you travel over the speed limit, you double your risk of a collision. At 20 miles over the speed limit, you quadruple your risk of a collision. Plan your trip. Be aware of the construction zones and temporary traffic issues in your driving surroundings. Be especially cautious at intersections. Talk to other drivers about the hazards in your driving area. Be a defensive driver. If you need to use your phone, find a safe place to pull off the road or the travel portion of the highway and activate your hazard lights and make the call quickly. Talking or texting on the phone is dangerous, and in most cases it's illegal. If you text and drive, it's not a question of if you have an accident, it's a question of when you have an accident and how bad it will be. Your perception reaction time while texting can be as great as 3 seconds. How many of you would drive down the road on a busy interstate or a crowded city street with your eyes closed for 3 seconds? That's what you're doing essentially when you text and drive. Remember, your calls, your internet usage, and any text messages can be tracked back to your phone. Using a cell phone while being involved in a collision may result in criminal or administrative penalties. Drive defensively. Look ahead. A good driver will look about 10 seconds ahead of where they're going. Looking ahead allows you time to see incidents and avoid them before you get to them. It gives you time for evasive maneuvers. Time and distance are your friends. Use them. Drive defensively and act with restraint so that you don't become a statistic. Use turn signals and look twice before changing lanes. Avoid lane hopping. Changing lanes multiple times when unnecessary only increases your chances of being involved in a collision. Do not engage in lengthy conversations with other passengers because it will distract you. Your entire focus should be on the driving task. Keep your head on a swivel and pay attention. Intersections. Take the time to look twice before entering. Continue to scan both sides as you cross the intersection. Be aware of view obstructions from signs or vegetations, and make eye contact with other drivers. The next time you're sitting at an intersection waiting for your light to turn green, I encourage you to look at the people that go through the intersection. Notice that the vast majority never look to their left or right. Just because you have a green light does not mean you have a force field. Keep your head on a swivel. Avoid that intersection collision. Your vehicle is a very powerful weapon. At 60 miles an hour, a 4,500-pound pickup truck develops about 273,000 foot-pounds of energy. Now let's compare that to a 165 grain 40 caliber jacketed hollow point bullet that the police routinely use. That develops about 443 foot-pounds of energy at the muzzle. Your vehicle is a very powerful and deadly weapon. It can cause mass destruction. Let's talk about policy for a minute. How can policy help you? And how can policy cause you issues? When you think of policy, I like to use the analogy of an umbrella. You're outside, it's starting to rain, you get your big golf umbrella out and you put it above your head, and it protects you from the rain. Sure, you may get some damp cuffs or some damp shoes, but for the most part, you'll stay dry. Think of policy as your umbrella. If you follow your policy, you have that protection available to you. Now, how can policy cause you problems? Think about the umbrella again. If you're out in the rainstorm and you put the umbrella up, you're going to get soaking wet. Same thing with policy. It doesn't matter whether you like policy or agree with policy, but if you don't follow policy, it's not there to protect you. And you're left out on your own in the cold, so to speak. What does your policy require? Does it require cones that are put around a vehicle when you stop? Does it require the use of a flashing yellow light when you're conducting some sort of a construction project with your vehicles? Does policy require the use of signs in a work zone? Does policy require the use of retroreflective vest or high visibility clothing while you're working? Does policy require the use of safety equipment such as hard hats or steel-toed boots? You should know your policy. You should read your policy. If you don't understand it, get with one of your supervisors and have them explain it to you. Policy is one of your most important insurance policies that you have. Some employees don't wear their seatbelt. How can that be? If you don't wear your seatbelt, you're 17 times more likely to be injured in a collision. 17 times. Seatbelts are designed two ways. The seatbelt is designed to hold you in place, while the airbag comes out as an additional supplementary restraint system to slow you down over time. It's much like an egg being thrown at a wall. If I take an egg and throw it at the wall, it's going to break. If I take a sheet and hang it from the wall, throw the egg at the sheet slows the egg down more slowly over a greater period of time, and the egg may not break. So the supplemental restraint systems in your vehicles are there for you. Use them. The seatbelt does you no good if you're not wearing it. And if you don't wear your seatbelt, your airbag may not deploy because the two are interconnected and the computer in the car knows that you don't have it on. Use both for your benefit. Driving at night. In a future module, we're going to talk more about driving at night, but let's talk briefly about it for a minute. You're probably overdriving your headlights at night, even at posted highway speeds, especially on limited access highways with a speed limit of 70 miles an hour or more. Now, pedestrians wrongly, erroneously believe that if they can see your headlights, you can see them. Nothing could be further from the truth. If a pedestrian enters your path from left to right and you're traveling at highway speeds, there's a 95% possibility that you'll strike them. Certain colors at night reduce recognition because at night we see with contrast, either positive contrast or negative contrast. And depending on the color of clothing that an individual may be wearing, it may be more difficult to see them. There's other factors at night that can affect your vision, such as the weather, bugs, glare, the safety glass itself. There are some human factors that can affect your vision, things like sleep deprivation. If you do not get at least 8 hours of sleep, you're more likely to be involved in a collision. If you only get 4 to 5 hours of sleep a night, you're 4 times more likely to be involved in a collision. I'm not the food police, but your food intake can affect your ability to handle an accident. If you eat a high-fat diet, your perception reaction times will be slower. Smoking products and tobacco products can affect your night vision. There is a chemical in the eye that's commonly referred to as purple, and whenever you use a nicotine product, purple is not manufactured in the eye. Purple is used at night to help the outside part of the eye see better. So if you smoke or if you use tobacco products while you drive at night, you certainly don't see as well as if you did not use them. Stress and being distracted is a huge factor in night driving. If you're thinking about something other than the driving test, your perception reaction time will be much slower. There's things called visual noise out there. Other headlights from approaching vehicles, street lights, road signs, lighted neon signs at businesses. All these things direct unwanted light into our eye and makes it tougher for us to see the oncoming pedestrian or traffic. Finally, sounds can affect us. Loud music, loud noise, loud conversations in the vehicle can all affect and slow down your perception reaction times. Stay focused on your driving task, especially at night. Your eyes are very ineffective at night. We use two different parts of the eyes to see. We use the inside or center part of the eye to see during daylight times. That's where we get our depth perception, our clarity, and our color vision. At nighttime, we use the outside part of our eye, and we see in grayscale. We have very poor depth perception. So by definition, we are worse drivers at night than during the day. Then we also have to deal with some of the physical parts of the car. We have lamps and lamp covers. When you wash your windshields, wash your headlamps. That's how you see at night, from light that comes from the headlamp out to an object and back into your eye. So the cleaner your headlamp is, the better the light will operate. Don't outrun your headlights. The federal government requires that low beam headlights must shine out and reflect back from an object 250 feet away. Your high beams are 350 feet. But that's not the total story. Based on the color of the object and the angle from which it appears, those numbers can be substantially less than that. At nighttime, we have to deal with things called disability glare, from either rain, mist, fog, smoke, snow, to oncoming headlights, and to some of the other things we previously mentioned. All these affect our ability to clearly see what's in front of us. The faster we drive, the less we see. When a person is stationary, they have a vision parameter of about 195 degrees. So you're talking about a parameter that's out here toward the outside part of our eye. At 50 to 60 miles an hour, that narrows to about 100 degrees. At 70 miles an hour, it narrows even more. So the faster you drive, the less you see. The less you see. We also have positive and negative contrast. And I want to show you a series of slides that demonstrate that. But basically, positive contrast is headlights that shine out on an object and then reflect back into our eye with sufficient illumination for us to recognize the object. Negative contrast, on the other hand, is light that comes from behind an object that illuminates the outline of the object. So we don't see color, we see black versus white, but that's negative contrast. If positive contrast and negative contrast are equal, we have what's called washout. In other words, the item or person is invisible. So in this particular scenario, if we have headlights shining on a person from our car and headlights approaching from behind the person shining in our eyes, at some point those light illumination levels equal. And when they equal, that person becomes invisible to our eye. Finally, as far as visibility issues go, precipitation can really reduce our line of sight and our sight distance. If you'll notice on the chart, we lose about 20% of our sight distance with 1 inch of rainfall per hour. At 1.5 inches of snow per hour, we lose about 35% of our sight distance. So the harder it rains or the harder it snows, obviously the less we can see. Compensate for that by increasing your following distance and slowing down. Railroad crossings. There's one basic rule with railroad crossings. The train always has the right of way. A train with 100 cars can weigh several million pounds. At 35 miles an hour, can take up to a mile to stop. There are no exceptions to this. The train can't turn the steering wheel, the train can't make a left or right, and the train is very slow at stopping. There may not be a horn sound depending on the location. If your city has ordinances that prohibit it, the train may not sound its horn at a crossing. Keep your eyes open. Look twice before you cross. The signal lights may not be in operation. They may be out for whatever reason, so don't trust a signal light and don't bet your life on it. Beware of multiple tracks and do not drive around a malfunctioning gate at a grade crossing. Finally, don't stop on the tracks. There's white lines that are on each side of the crossing. Make sure your vehicle is stopped behind those white lines until you can ascertain whether it's clear for you to cross. Use extreme caution when you approach a rail crossing. Don't trust the signal lights or the cross-arm bars. Pull up to the white stop bar prior to reaching the rail. Turn your radio off. Roll your windows down. Look left and right. And look twice. Never sit on a rail. You never know when a train is going to approach, and a train cannot stop. It's very difficult to judge the approaching speed of a train due to its large size and the approach angle. It's very easy to underestimate its speed, so never try to beat a train. To review what we've talked about today, I'd like to keep several things in mind. First of all, your head should always be in motion. Survey your surroundings. Don't have tunnel vision. Watch your speed. Watch your following distance. Realize that your car or your truck is a very powerful weapon should it become an out-of-control situation. Remember that the locomotive always has the right of way. Be safe out there in your driving task.